соноо оюутнуудаа оюунлаг төвийн Австрали улс дахь салбараас та бүхэндээ мэдчилж байна. За өнөөдрийн энэ видеогоор бид нэр Австрали улсын North Sydney English College-ийн сургууль дээр хурж ирээд байна. Энэ сургуулийн маань IELTS болон TOEFL-ийн багш маань Rick гэдэг энэ хүн байгаа. За тэгэхээр энэ хүнээс IELTS-та хэрхэн бэлдэх боломжтой вэ? Оюутнууд маань IELTS дээр юу ямар алдаа гаргадаг вэ? Мөн түнчлэн сайн оноо авахын тулд яах вэ гэдэг талаар жижигхэн зөвлөгөө авъя гэж бодсон юм аа. Okay. Very well, Rick. How are you?
Yeah, good. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. Can you please introduce briefly about yourself to our students, please?
Okay. Yeah. So my name's Rick. I've been teaching English for 25 years. Teaching IELTS classes for 20 years.
Wow.
And yeah, I'm a very lucky man. I enjoy my job. The students are fantastic. The students are hardworking, funny, interesting, kind. They're wonderful people. I'm a lucky man. I enjoy my job.
Wow.
And every day in my class I look at listening, reading, writing and speaking, and hopefully the students get a good education.
Oh, yeah, it sounds very impressive for me. All right. Okay, well, then can you please, some students sometimes ask me about what is the difference between general IELTS or academic IELTS? So can you please explain me what is differences between these two different IELTS?
Okay, yeah. So general training IELTS, academic IELTS.
Yes.
The listening is exactly the same. Listening, general training, academic, exactly the same. The speaking, general training IELTS and academic IELTS, exactly the same, the same. The reading, general training IELTS, academic IELTS, it's the same style.
Right.
It's just that the academic one is harder, but it's exactly the same style. Writing, long essay, general training, academic, basically exactly the same. Most books teach them together. I mean, maybe the academic subjects are slightly harder,
right.
but basically exactly the same. The only big difference between general training IELTS and academic IELTS is the short writing. So short writing for general training IELTS is a letter, and short writing for academic IELTS, they have to describe a graph or bar chart or pie chart, or if they're unlucky, a picture with a process maybe, and it can be quite difficult sometimes. General training IELTS is usually for immigration, and academic IELTS is usually for going to university.
Yeah, if they wanted to study university, then they can take an academic IELTS, right? If they wanted to some other options like to work in Australia or something like that, they can take an general IELTS, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, that's cool, perfect. Then, okay, can you please give us some advice or implication about how to students improve the IELTS skills, specifically like writing, listening, and speaking section?
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So techniques, ways to improve the score for listening, reading, writing, speaking. Yes. Well, for listening in my class every day, we focus on you're looking at the questions. You have to look at the questions, think about keywords, think about possible answers, think about different words with the same meaning. It's or sometimes the opposite meaning. That's basically the most important thing. There are many kinds of questions in the listening test. We don't have time to look at everything here, but just for one example, they often have number questions, time questions, date questions in the listening, and very often the answer is not the first thing that the person says. So for example, question 1, how many people were there in the room? A, 50, B, 30,
Right.
C, 20. And then they will say, when I first went into the room, I thought there were about 50 people there, but actually I checked later and there were only 30. So the answer is 30,
Yes.
not 50. Yeah, the answer is often not the first thing that they say, often, not always, with number questions, date
Right.
questions, time questions. Reading. With the reading, same thing. Look at the questions, think about keywords, think about possible answers, think about different words with the same meaning or a similar meaning. Again, we don't really have time to look at all the different kinds of questions that there are in the reading, but just looking quickly at some key ones. True, false, not given. Many students hate true, false, not given questions. Many students say to me, Rick, I hate true, false, not given questions.
Me too.
Many students say to me, Rick, this question, I'm not sure. I think maybe false, maybe not given.
Yeah.
I usually say, if you think maybe false, maybe not given, guess false. Usually there are more false answers than not given answers. Usually there's only one answer that's not given, but you could get two answers not given, or three, or zero, but usually only one. Another kind of question that students find difficult is when you have to choose the heading for a paragraph, for a section, the title for a paragraph for a section. And with that kind of question, the key information is usually at the start of the paragraph section, first sentence, second sentence, usually, because that's where the topic sentence is. But again, it could be at the end or the middle or in the middle. But usually with that kind of question, the key information is at the start of the paragraph. So those are just two kinds of questions in the reading. Of course, there are many more. For writing, well, for writing, the number one rule, the golden rule that examiners talk about is answer the question. Make sure you answer the question. The number one reason students get a lower score than they want in the writing test, is they haven't answered the question, or they haven't answered all of the question. They've gone a bit off topic. Examiners talk about the golden rule, answer the question. For short general training, make sure you answer all three bullet points. So in the question you get blah 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 blah, and then we get what we call bullet points. So bullet point here, blah blah blah, bullet point, blah blah blah, bullet point, blah blah blah. So basically there are three parts to the short general training writing, and many students, for example, often forget the last part, and that is a problem, big problem. You must answer every part of the question. For short academic writing, which remember is describing a graph, bar chart, picture if you're unlucky, the key word is describe. You're not you don't have to give your opinion about it. You're just describing increase, decrease, and I think a lot of students think it looks easy, but it's not easy. It's actually really tough. The short academic writing, you need practice, and it's a lot harder than it looks, unfortunately. For long essays, there are basically two kinds of long essays. Some books say 7 kinds, some books say 4 kinds, but essentially 2 kinds. So A, long essays, agree, disagree, or advantage, disadvantage essays. B, essays that are not agree, disagree, not advantage, disadvantage. And remember, for the long essay, basically general training IELTS, academic IELTS are basically the same. So, for example, for a long essay, for an agree, disagree, advantage, disadvantage essay, you could get something like, school uniforms are a good idea, and then do you agree or do you disagree? This is probably the most common kind of question. Do you agree or do you disagree? Or often they write this, to what extent, which means how much, do you agree or disagree? That's very common. They're the most common kind of questions for long essays. But yes, also we get essays that are not agree, disagree, advantage, disadvantage essays, and something like what problems do cars cause in cities with pollution, with traffic jams,
Yes.
and how can we solve those problems, for example. That would be another kind of long essay, and you must answer the question. And remember that examiners check 4 things when they check the writing. Number 1, has the student answered the question?
All right.
Number 2, they check structure. And this is where lots of students have problems,
Yes.
to be honest. I mean, normally, for example, with an agree, disagree, advantage, disadvantage essay, normally it would be introduction, advantages, agree things, disadvantages, disagree things, conclusion, normally.
Okay.
So yeah, examiners check 4 things. Has the student answered the question? Structure, then grammar, vocabulary. And many students focus too much on grammar, vocabulary,
Yes.
and don't focus enough on answering the question and structure.
Right.
So those are key. Speaking.
Speaking.
What are some good techniques for improving the speaking? Well, I think the speaking test has 3 sections. Part 1 is about 4 or 5 minutes, and there are about 9 questions, and they're basic introduction questions. Where are you from? Please tell me about your hometown. What are your hobbies? That kind of thing. The key thing is to give nice long answers. I recommend 10 seconds, maybe 15 seconds for each answer in part 1. Fluency is the key thing in the speaking test.
Yeah.
Grammar is important, vocabulary is important, but the key thing is fluency. Nice intonation, pronunciation, communication.
Yeah.
So 10 or 15 seconds for each answer in part 1. Part 2 of the speaking test is a speech. The examiner will give you a card with a topic on it. For example, talk about your favorite teacher, talk about a time when you were sick, something like that. You have 1 minute to prepare, and then you should talk for 1 or 2 minutes. Talking for 2 minutes is better than talking for 1 minute. Again, fluency is the key thing. A little bit of body language is a good idea. They're not checking body language, but it helps you to look more natural. Lots of intonation. Examiners like lots of intonation. Don't say wonderful, say wonderful. Examiners like to hear lots of intonation, and try to get to basically 2 minutes, 1 minute 50 seconds, 2 minutes. Part 3 of the speaking test. Part 3 is like part 1, about 4 or 5 minutes, and I usually recommend about 15 or 20 seconds for each answer in part 3. Part 1, 10 or 15 seconds. Part 3, 15 or 20 seconds for each answer. And part 3 questions are on the same topic as part 2. So for example, if part 2 is talk for 1 or 2 minutes about your favorite teacher, then part 3 will be about education. Questions about education. If part 2 is talk for 2 minutes, 1 or 2 minutes about a time you were ill, then part 3 will be questions about doctors, hospitals, nurses, that kind of thing. Again, fluency is the key thing. Nice long answers. Make sure you answer the questions, same as in the writing test. You don't go off topic. So, those are some key techniques for improving your score for listening, reading, writing, and speaking.
Right. It is very impressive. Thank you very much for all these
you're welcome.
advice for students.
Yeah.
And you have been teaching English for 25
Yes.
years, right? So what is the common mistakes for students doing during the IELTS test? What do you think?
Good question. Good question. I mean, there are, of course, lots of mistakes. It's difficult speaking a different language, doing a test. What are key mistakes? Well, many students are not very confident, and that can affect their scores. And if you come to a class, that can really help you to build up your confidence. and help you to get a higher score. Another problem is running out of time.
Yeah.
Many students in the reading test, for example, don't finish section 3. And that's a problem. I mean, that is annoying. And I know it's difficult, but running out of time is a big issue.
Problem, yeah.
Also with the writing, of course, with the writing test, many students don't write enough. In the long essay, you need 250 words.
Yes.
If you only write 170 words, you're immediately going to lose points. So that's another problem, mistake. Students, another mistake, I mean, I don't want to sound too negative because the students are wonderful, but yeah, there are some mistakes that people make. Another mistake is, well, not practicing enough. In my class, once a month, we do a full practice test, and basically every day is like a mini test. And students need to practice, and that will improve their confidence.
Yeah, of course.
Lots of students just they go and do the test, and they haven't tried, they practiced anything, and they have trouble. Other mistakes, other problems. Well, I can only talk about the usual things. So articles, a and the, prepositions, past tenses, all the usual things. Articles. I mean, I've got a student at the moment, wonderful student, hard-working and very intelligent student, but he makes a lot of mistakes with articles, with the, particularly a and, but particularly the, actually. And yeah, I mean, again, in my class and all the other classes, we focus on things like that, and students need to work on those things, and if they can correct those mistakes, then of course they will get much higher scores, which is what everybody wants.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I think those are kind of the main mistakes that students make.
All right, yeah, that's really true because in Mongolian language we don't have any articles.
Yeah,
that's
languages,
why I totally forgot sometimes.
It's
that's
very
the
difficult,
common,
yes.
common mistakes.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for
you're welcome.
for your time to coming here
You're
and
welcome.
joining me today. Thanks a lot. Okay, bye everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.